Continuing on then with the economy chapter, one of the things that I brought up in my lecture at the Denton Public Library was how a lot of people are forming kind of a movement. You see a lot of it, especially you go out on the internet and you look at some different folks who are blogging about it, putting up websites about it. This homesteading movement, the modern homesteading movement, is really an interesting phenomenon. I think it's probably going to pick up steam. It's something that a lot of people are interested in. They're interested in it for a variety of different reasons. Homesteading is basically this movement towards self-sufficiency in terms of food, in terms of labor, in terms of energy, in terms of one's relationship with the environment. There are an awful lot of people, more and more so, some of them a little flaky, but hey, that's America, who are moving to different areas, different parts of the country, either in the country, in rural areas, buying a little land and deciding I want to grow some of my own food, I want to raise some of my own animals, I want to start my own business, handicrafts business or something like this. Or sometimes there's even a magazine called Urban Homesteading, where people are setting up what they call urban homesteads, just small suburban backyards that they're going to turn from grass lawn into tomatoes and beans and peaches and things of this nature, growing their own food. There's a big fight in a lot of towns about whether or not people can keep chickens in their backyard. Years ago, people kept chickens for eggs and meat, obviously, sometimes just because chickens are a lot of fun to watch and they're kind of funny looking. And so this modern homesteading movement is really picking up a lot of momentum. Part of it's because people are concerned about where their food comes from. If you look at all the different Food Inc. and different kinds of documentaries and books that are out there about what the heck are they putting in the food. And it's a way of kind of regaining control over what you eat. Sometimes it's about sustainability, environmentalism motivates a lot of these folks. Sometimes it's just a desire to be very independent and the pride of doing that. If you look at page 46, Thoreau kind of tips his hat at the pride in having built his own house. You know, he used just scrap lumber, borrowed some tools and things and put it all together, bought some stuff. And he says there is some of the same fitness in a man's building his own house that there is in a bird's building its own nest. Who knows, but if men constructed their own dwellings with their own hands and provided food for themselves and families simply and honestly enough, the poetic faculty could be universally developed, as birds universally sing when they are so engaged. What he wants is a unity of labor, not a division of labor. He wants people to be able to do things for themselves again. You know, a lot of people think that beef comes in plastic wrapped stuff in a tray from the grocery store. If you've been watching this Jamie Oliver series about the food revolution, and he asks public school kids, where does butter come from? And kids don't know. They have no idea. He asked one kid, where does honey come from? And the kid said, bears. What? People don't know where their food comes from. We've lost the connection to life, the cycle of life, what it has to teach us, the natural world and what it has to do. We've insulated ourselves. We've walled ourselves off. We don't get our hands dirty anymore. He says, when you build your house, when you make a sweater for one of your kids, when you make a dinner from scratch, when you grow your own dadgum tomatoes in the backyard, it's a great thing because you feel wonderful and you learn a lot. Some of it, you end up cussing a little bit because you screwed it up, but you learn from that. And our interaction, our kinetic interaction with the physical world is what we're missing because we're outsourcing everything we do. We do this one teeny tiny, narrow thing for a living, and we're forgetting what we have to learn from doing all kinds of things. What a wonderful physical, natural, material world it is, quite apart from what you can buy and sell. But what you do with your hands and with your back and with your feet and with your brain in interacting with it. So this is really what he wants to encourage people to do, is get out there and do this. Become self-sufficient. You'll just feel so much better about yourself and you'll learn a lot. And he says, maybe we'll become more creative people when we do that. Now, in 2011, good heavens, how we've gone even further in that direction of that division of labor and redivision and re-redivision of labor, more so than in his time. The other thing, in terms of picking up this thread on rethinking cost, look at what he has to say about the railroad fare. Someone asks him, why do you walk to Boston? Why do you bother doing that? And he says, because It's faster. So what do you mean it's faster? You can take the railroad, and the railroad gets there very quickly. Well, his point on page 53 is, he says the distance is 30 miles. The fare is 90 cents. So if I buy a railroad ticket, it costs me 90 cents. That's almost a day's wages. He says, well, I start on foot now and I get there before night. You will, in the meantime, have earned your fare and arrive there sometime tomorrow or possibly this evening if you're lucky enough to get a job in season. He says it's just faster to walk, frankly, because in order to earn the ticket money, I got to work all day. Then I got to get on the train, and the train takes, I don't know, 3 hours to get to town. It's faster just to walk. Don't bother getting the job. Don't bother earning the money. Don't bother buying the ticket. Just walk. And oh, by the way, if you walk, you might see some really beautiful and interesting things if you keep your eyes open. So this is what he's talking about rethinking the cost. This is a funny book. People don't think it's funny, but it's a really funny book. And here's why. I can't believe how many people in high school English classes or even college English classes miss this point. What does he do? He breaks down all the cost of everything and what it cost him and all this kind of stuff, and it gets a little boring with all the dollars and cents and the half cents and how much of this he bought and how much of that he bought. But he's doing it for a reason. He is proving to you a hypothesis. And the hypothesis is, no matter how stupid you are, you can almost not starve to death. He grows as a cash crop beans. And if you've ever lived in New England, if there's one thing nobody buys in New England because everybody's got a backyard full of them, it's beans. After all, what is Boston's nickname? Beantown. People grow beans out their ears in Boston. Okay? It's a bit like buying, selling tomatoes in the South, when everybody in small towns has tomato plants in their backyard, something like that. But if there's one agricultural commodity for which there is almost no demand in New England, it's beans. What does he grow? Beans. Stupid choice? Yes, intentionally so. In fact, he even tells you that he plants them late, harvests them early, doesn't really adequately fertilize them, doesn't bother to weed them very much because he's really busy writing poetry, and he allows the woodchucks to eat about half of his crop. And at the end of the year, he makes a profit. Moral of the story? He sets himself up as kind of this stupid persona. Even an idiot like me can make a living if you're just modest enough in what it is you want out of life. If you'll live very modestly. And remember, I only wanted a small little place. 1-room cabin, that's all I need. I wasn't out buying a whole bunch of clothes. I didn't do all the stuff that some people like to do. I was perfectly content in trading all those things for time. Time to do what? Time to write, time to think, time to read. It's what I wanted to do. That's what I spent my time doing, rather than earning money and those kinds of things. But even if I took this job as a joke, I mean, he works 1 day a week and takes the other 6 days and reads and writes and thinks and explores. It's almost impossible, he says, to starve to death. Nature will take care of you. Nature and God look after idiots. And he said, I did the stupidest thing you could, and I still made a living. He also then says on page 71, look, I'm not asking you to live like me. I don't want you to do that. I want you to go do your own thing. Find your own thing. He says, I would not have anyone adopt my mode of living on any account. For beside that before he has fairly learned it, meaning my way of living, I may have found another mode of living for myself. I desire that there may be as many different people in the world as possible. But I would have each one be very careful to find out and pursue his own way, and not his father's or his mother's or his neighbor's instead. The youth may build or plant or sail. Only let him not be hindered from doing what he tells me he would like to do. Oh, Dr. Litton, what I'd really like to do is this. Well, one day I'd like to do this. I'd like to do this for a living. I see myself doing it. Thoreau would say, drop what you're doing right now and go and do it. Why would you give up one more day of happiness in exchange for misery? Why would you do that? There's no reason to do it. Well, I got this payment and that payment and that. Sell your crap and go do what you love. Do it now. You don't know how much time you have. Don't study doing good. Just do it. On page 73 says, if I were to preach at all in this strain, I should say rather, Set about being good. Don't preach to people what they ought to do all the time. Don't study doing good. Don't take courses in ethics. Just be ethical. Don't plan about what I'm going to do one day, my dream job. Go live the dream job now. You're wasting time. The clock is ticking, people. By the way, he has pretty nasty things to say about philanthropists. He considers philanthropists to be truly awful people. Why? He says not because they're not motivated by good, but these people do a lot of damage. Do-gooders do a lot of damage. He says if there's one type of people you need to run from, it's do-gooders, because more crap has been done to the human race, bad stuff, because of do-gooders than anybody else. You know, take lethargic and lazy people any day over a do-gooder who's got lots of energy, because the lethargic and lazy person is no threat. The do-gooder could completely destroy your way of life. They're troublemakers beyond belief. When the town of Concord, led mostly by Emerson himself, took up a collection for Bronson Alcott, Louisa May Alcott's dad, who was a philosopher and a writer and never made any money. Louisa is the only one who ever made any money in the family. By the time she started selling things, they could finally make a living. Her parents were constantly in poverty, having to be bailed out by friends, having to have their rent paid by friends, and all of this kind of thing. It's when Louisa began to write things like Little Women and so on that they actually ended up getting a little money in the bank. But Bronson, her dad, was this brilliant guy, wonderful fellow, but hopeless in terms of being able to earn a living. Just a philosophical kind of guy who every venture just failed. So the town of Concord, and especially Emerson, decides to take up a collection. They say, you know, Bronson's never going to make a living, and he's got a lot of kids. Let's don't let the kids starve. Let's raise some money, put it in the bank, and they can live off the interest, and that's that. They raised $501. The $1 was from Thoreau. And Thoreau said that was the meanest, most awful thing I ever did for somebody. If I could take it back, I'd take that dollar back right now. It was a terrible thing. It was an evil thing that I did, giving to that man, because it took away his incentive to do for himself. He says it's one thing to say I want to be a philosopher, but you've got to be a philosopher who's able to make a living. And he said, by giving this man money, we just made him dependent, we made him a slave, we made him a child again. And he's never going to grow up. He's never going to stand on his own 2 feet. He's never going to make his own way in life unless he has the ability to do that. That's why Thoreau doesn't like philanthropists. People should live their own lives and be good people and not go around telling everybody else what to do. And for heaven's sakes, if you've got a plan to improve society, please put it in the trash can and light it on fire, according to Thoreau.